Okay, so this is American Archipelago, and I'm talking about um, SOs in prison. Okay, so welcome to American Archipelago, and this is once again a subject that I, don't want to talk about, or it's just nasty to talk about, but sex offenders in prison. Started to talk about it a little bit in a video I just did about transgender people. A lot of them are, from my experience, or end up being sex offenders. That's, not too crazy based on their, um, you know, uh, obsession with sex. I mean, it's just, kind of an odd thing to think about if um, yeah, and also just the aberration, like I said. And dude, I'm not a transphobe or anything. I'm just saying it's not normal to want to like snip off your genitalia or to be that like confused about your sexuality. It's just not normal. And if we're saying any otherwise, we're kidding ourselves. And whatever. If you disagree, that's fine. But so you have this person here who uh, his name is Chris Chan. No, he's not any relationship to Jackie Chan. But you can already see basically how he's going to be coddled in the prison system. And he might actually hit a yard because he's in California. And I will tell you, um, there are a few places, first of all, that actually um, like do something horrible to sex offenders, and California prisons is one of those places, and white people specifically in California prisons, and I, thought about it at times because there's times when I had a cellie who was like tipped up in the Arizona Aryan Brotherhood, and he was just gung ho about it. He's like, if you got bad paperwork, if you're in here for fucking touching kids, I will cut your fucking throat. That's what he would tell these people, or just tell any white guy in the new. And it's because first of all, there's like in the black car, is what they call it. There's a lot of people who are pimps, and the pimps are sex offenders. So there's like kind of an excuse or like a normalization there where they're like, well, man, Joe used motherfucking, selling them girls. He had them girls working on the street, and that's okay for somebody to be like, a sex offender for that, which is like against the Mann Act, and you're trafficking women, Um, now, the um, and also the DC blacks. The DC blacks have a lot of people who are sex offenders and rapists and or just horrible crimes that they've done, but they for whatever reason they just don't care when they have there's in fact this thing called DC rules, which is where somebody you know um, knocks you out, they take your ass. But I'm for the reason why I think in the white community, also a lot of people actually formerly molested, who are in prison, who are like, you know, and if they did manage to break the cycle, like some of these people I know, they're sometimes very, very angry, malicious, vicious individuals. Like they're like repressed um, sexuality and just hatred manifests itself into something else entirely, where you're just a complete psychopath. So, but and the other thing is that white sex offenders, just because the way they look, are so obvious. I mean, so it just like that makes us look bad if this dude gets on the yard and starts sitting around. Because if you have sex offenders at your table, dude, you could get kicked off the yard. Like the whole race, like fucking all the races get together and like, yo, we're kicking these fucking dudes off the yard. You have to bring a whole new crew of white people. It happens, like, dude, what, if you had a snitch running, like, as a rep, like, shit like that is very, serious, in the, system. Is like, it's funny that the quality of inmate, like who they are, matters. But, they do have places like, um, you know, there's horror stories. There's another guy, real quick. He killed his cellie, and you know, who happened to be a person who raped his sister, I think. And this happened in California, I believe. And this guy got 25 years after he. Yep. Oh, after he killed his. Yeah, after he killed this guy. It was in the news. I'd have to dig around and find it. But yeah. So a guy gets a new cellie. He's in for whatever, and that man happens to be in there for molesting his sister, something like that, and he kills him after he asks for a cell change too, and all this stuff. And that happens all the time where people get set up by the prison system, where they'll like put a white guy who's a fucking Aryan nation in with like a Crip, we'll see what happens. And that won't happen in like a place like a USP or something, because they'll literally both races will go after the cops. Like the black and the white guy will come over and get their people, because people aren't offended by racism in prison. That's the other thing. There's no offense in racism. Like black guys talk to white guys with a fucking swastika tattooed all over them, and people will tell. Like I used to get in debates with this guy who was an NOI, who was a Nation of Islam guy. He used to talk about white devil was created by a scientist and shit, and we used to have like historical debates. It wouldn't. It's actually a lot more healthy when you have, I think, you're able to actually criticize the other people, Like, you guys are this fucked up. It's like, hey, at least we're acknowledging, because there are some stereotypes that are true and that are really harmful, like, inside the community, Like, there's a lot of stuff about the black community and the white community. And, that are just, and those are typically the ones that, I'm just going to say another caveat real quick. White people aren't the ones who actually hate black people in prison. I'm just going to say that. We can get into that at a whole nother date. But so you got a place like this, USP Tucson. And here's the thing. If you're offended by this is just the way it is. This is the way it is in prison. I didn't fucking make the rules. It's just how it is. But so you have places like this, which is USP Tucson, and the BOP has a pretty sterilized cover for it. It's 1,371 total inmates, and then they have a camp, as most maximum security prisons do, for to have workers on site. Really, I mean, you always have a camp to clean up the roads around the prison and everything, but it also works because these guys can come in when there will be a lockdown, which there definitely will. There's always lockdowns at places like this because people die, so, but that's what the BOP says about it. But you go over here, and this is a site called Prison Insight. And it says, so Tucson Federal Correctional Complex, FCC Tucson, is located in Tucson, Arizona, and it contains both the Federal Corrections Institute, which is a medium, or like a minimum, and the United States Penitentiary, USP Tucson. FCI Tucson is a medium security, and USP is a high security, but the USP Tucson is part of the Sex Offender Management Program, SOMP, or SIMP. Which means that the general population has a high number of sex offenders to help them feel safe in participating in the program. It's a little typo they got. USP Tucson also houses many high-profile sex offenders, like Larry Nassar, bing, if you remember this fucking chomo, who was, found guilty for molesting his girls that on his gymnastics team. I think he was or team doctor for the gymnastics team. What a piece of shit. He's just gross. You gotta always be skeptical of just some guy who just wants to work around like fucking women's sports or something. Like, really? Really? That's what you want to do with your time? Just hang out with fucking 14-year-old girls? No. It's like a fucking Boy Scout leader that doesn't have kids. Like, you guys are fucking idiots. But, so they, you know, coddle these people who did these horrible things. But the fact is that if they were to kick them out into another USP, and these guys all got time, well, they're gonna die. So, you know, there's a little bit of that and a little bit of this. Ooh, up to bam. You got a place like Big Muddy, which is in the, you know, the prison, or in Illinois, which is where I was from. And it has a, this is the last thing I'll leave you guys with. It has a civil commitment ward where, you know, if you're like a sex offender and you're on like a 3 to life prison sentence, which a lot of them are, they're like, oh god, they're basically just on parole for life, but they call that a, indeterminate sentence. And that's something that used to be popular back in the day. It used to be like you get like 5 to 15 in prison, you know, like for like an armed robbery. Pretty wide, you know, window for discretion, you know, which is kind of, it could screw over people based on their race, their fucking disciplinary record, whatever it is. And how that manifested most times in history, honestly, probably race, was that somebody would go into prison for, you know, recklessly eyeballing a white woman, which was reported as whatever, and, you know, they ended up getting a 15-year sentence for fucking, you know, might have, you know, gave the lady the time of day or something, and not, you know, in a sexual way. Like, there's all types of horror stories that can go along with this. But, Illinois, I think, is a little bit more, honest about what the hell goes on at this place. Maybe not, but, yeah, maybe. No. Yeah, it has a civil commitment. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's various programs. Nope. Yeah, it has a civil commitment ward, but where basically people aren't under a sentence, so they can have a little bit more freedoms. It's like it's a mental hospital. That's what it is. It's a mental health facility at the end of the day, but it's for people like, you know, if you can't live around schools or, you know, Chuck E. Cheese's or fucking, you know, playgrounds, whatever it is, and all of the above, your living options are going to be somewhat limited. So you're going to end up sitting there, and I remember going to the parole board at Shawnee, which is a place that had a lot of sex offenders. They try to pack them in so they're like, you know, their own like contingent, their own car. But dude, there's like 200 guys at the parole hearing, and what that told me, because there's not 200 guys getting out of a high medium. That's just not even fucking close. You know, I was maybe one of maybe, I don't know, like 50 parole violators that had come there in the last month, and they do them every 6 weeks. They do them on like the second Sunday, or, you know, some rotation. And these people, the parole board, are like just civil servants. They're just like put in their position by the governor. We could go on about the parole board, but these guys there's not that many people getting out of a place where a lot of people are doing a lot of time. It's these people are like ready to go. They just need to get a parole board to agree with their living circumstances. So when your date comes and you're a sex offender, you don't just walk out the door. But yeah, there's, like I said, this is American Archipelago. If you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, about sex offenders, or you got family members who are in either side of the boat and you want to ask questions or comments, or if you just want to yell at me and say I'm, you know, evil person and mean for just telling the truth about what shit's like behind the wall or behind the razor wire, as it were, go ahead and do that. And I do commentary on the criminal justice system, prison history, all that. And I have a podcast coming out where I actually go into these prison history, crazy asshole penitentiaries that have awesome history, and we'll get into all that. So, appreciate y'all listening, and talk to you soon.